Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our COVID Wellness and Safety Update webinar. Today, we have Ernest Creamers from Creamers Safety to present on this topic for us. Thanks so much for being here today, Ernest. Before we start, I just have some general housekeeping rules. Please ensure your mic is muted throughout the presentation. This will just help cause less disruptions and distractions to Ernest. If you have a question for Ernest, please write it in the chat box. Please try to keep questions until the end of the webinar, as we will have a period at the end of the presentation where Ernest will be able to answer your remaining questions. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Ernest to get things going.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. It's a real pleasure to be back. The last time we had a presentation like this was in late May. It seems a lifetime ago. Again, it's a privilege to be here, and I look forward to our conversation today. Really want to do a shout out to our frontline workers, and just let me get this moving forward here. We want to make sure that you understand that right now there are 3,200 healthcare workers across Canada that have contracted COVID-19. There's a shortage. And the ones that are working at the moment, folks, have been working ever since this whole pandemic process began. So they are in a state of, how would I put it, emergency themselves. There's a shortage of healthcare workers. And so we want to make sure that we remember our frontline workers, not just our healthcare workers, but our police, our fire departments, and anyone else who looks after emergency services, and including our food banks, because it seems with the way that our economy has gone over the last while that there's a lot of people that have need of those. So I just want us to make sure that we remember that. And if you see one outside of the process while you're properly socially distanced, say thank you to them, because they are the ones that are looking after all of us. So what we're going to look at today, folks, is it's very similar to the one we've had before, but some things have changed, and we've added some information for you so that you can be fully prepared to recognize where we are at. So we're going to give a COVID numbers update today, but we're also going to look at active cases. It has now come to light with the total numbers in Canada. Yes, we're upticking, but there are some real alarming rates of active cases. So we'll look at that specifically. We are now in the second wave, so we'll go through that particular process. We'll bring you up to date on the state of the vaccines that are going to be available over the next 12 to 24 months. We still will look at some industry challenges that we're facing. And then, of course, we all know about COVID or pandemic fatigue. So we'll get right into it. Again, please write your questions in the chat. We are going to do our best to make sure that you have as much information as possible by the end of this session. As you can see, the Canada total is just under 390,000. The majority still of the complete cases are in Quebec, Ontario, but we're rising rapidly here in Alberta. And one of the positive things that is happening, folks, is that now that we're into this in a longer term, the medical community is starting to understand some of the remedies and processes to start minimizing those numbers in the right-hand column. One of the things you must be aware of that 70% or the people over 70 are up to 90% of those total numbers. So they
Sorry, Ernest, I'm just going to interrupt you. We don't see the column on our screens. It's just your introduction screen.
Okay, why not? Okay, thank you. The screen is paused. Okay, hang on. Let me fix that. Thank you for interrupting.
No worries. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so as you can see, close to 390,000, and then those fatality numbers, which is tragic. There's no doubt about it. And 90% of those numbers are made of people of 70 and older. So yes, the numbers have risen dramatically since May. It really has. And so we're going to really talk about restrictions this morning as well, because there are some challenges with all of that. And we want everyone to be aware how Alberta is being affected, and especially in the Calgary and Edmonton regions. So now these are the active cases that are present as of December 2nd, which was the numbers from end of December 1. Alberta is leading this process. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress enough that this has risen dramatically. And even though the total numbers in Ontario, Quebec are the most, their active cases are less than ours. And so, and the rest of Canada, you can see the numbers there. Nova Scotia is about a third to a half of those numbers of 379. This should wake us up, folks. It really should put us on edge of making sure that our people are protected, our families are protected, our friends are protected, because we need to get those numbers down, because the medical system could be overwhelmed. So these are the total numbers in Alberta and in the region. Now, this is ever since it started, so we've had a total of 6,100 confirmed cases, and as you can see, the Calgary and Edmonton zones are the hotspots, and which makes sense to the fact that they have the most population. However, all zones, south, north, and central, have been affected. And as you can see, that the north zone, which at the beginning of this was not anywhere close, has risen exponentially as well. So here we now have where the active cases are, and I think it's important to understand that between
Hey, Ernest, sorry, we're still on the previous screen. I don't think we've moved to the Alberta screen specifically.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Nope, appreciate you doing that. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so active cases, folks. Between Calgary, Edmonton, and the central zone is where most of our active cases are. And I think that a lot of our businesses have work in those areas. And so the central zone, again, at the beginning of this was not that heavily affected with active cases, but that has now risen as well, and of course Calgary and Edmonton. So it behooves us to make sure that we ensure, again, that we're looking after ourselves. And so how's that? Can you see that? Is that okay?
Yes, that worked. Thank you.
Good, good. Okay, so new restrictions, folks. In Calgary and Edmonton and all of Alberta, no more social indoor gatherings in any settings. Outdoor gathering max of 10, of course, with social distance. Weddings and funeral max of 10 and no receptions, no festival or events. We're going to talk about the schooling a little later on. Working from home, of course, that is the new normal. And then, of course, places of worship at a third of fire code occupancy. And restricted access to some business, right? We're up to at the 25% factor, and mandatory masks for indoor workplaces in the Calgary and Edmonton cities. Now, one of the things that we need to understand that they are very concerned with the indoor gatherings because in certain cases people consume adult beverages, and in certain cases those may have a little too much and then start forgetting the social distance process. 40% of community transmission has happened inside the home. That's why the process has been introduced that there's no more social gatherings. So you need to have your core people in your family. And so I think this is going to be very difficult at Christmas time. There's lots of people that are talking about how they feel about that. And I have a great respect for that because you love your family, you appreciate your family, and you want to get together with Christmas. But I strongly suggest that you take a sober look at that to make sure that we don't have an opportunity for more community transmissions. Because Christmas could be that new super spreader as Thanksgiving has been, because we're just right after that. And the numbers have risen dramatically. Want to talk about stress with essential workers, hospitals, grocery stores, continuing care beds, 500 have closed to stop the virus. Some acute care facilities are running at 125% occupancy. 30% of effective surgeries have been canceled. They are now putting 2 people to a room that are infected with COVID so they can maximize the resources because the staff is exhausted, and they're also talking about the conservation of oxygen to make sure that they've got enough supply. So our frontline workers are stressed, and I'll talk about that from the home as well. So elderly are at risk, frontline workers, and those with underlying health conditions. Now, even individuals that may not know that they have or don't have underlying health conditions, COVID-19 is a unique process. It will look at your body's system, and it will infiltrate any and all weak areas that may be available there, and that doesn't matter how old you are. So I watched the news yesterday. The Canadian actor that was on West Wing, him and his wife, they both got COVID-19. They still have some residual effects, but their story about that is it's not like anything you may have encountered before. So can't stress enough prevention in this. So home, work from home. Again, that causes challenges, doesn't it? School is going back to e-learning, so grades 7 to 12 at home learning starting from November 30th to January 11th, and that may go longer depending on if we can flatten our curves. ECS in grade 6 at home learning after break until January 11th as well. And so that's going to put a lot of challenge again, right? No visitors, difficult for families to get together. Childcare is minimized as well because of the COVID-19. So this creates a challenge for families who are now in the same space together. And so a lot of new things are happening at home where people are trying to make sure that they keep everybody occupied. And it is difficult to work from home when you've got a toddler wanting your attention. And so those are all the new part of the new normal. Personal finances, again, the finances, 25% capacity in some of the businesses, most retail. That is going to cause a challenge financially. There may be more layoffs coming, who knows? We'll have to take a look at that. There's still the recovery benefit for unemployment, so $1,000 every 2 weeks if you've been laid off during this process. And that is going to go till the September 25th, 2021. Now, we're in the second wave. Is there going to be a third wave? Well, that depends on us. If Christmas is not, how would I put it in a most polite way, if people don't take heed of staying at home themselves with their immediate family, then we may have a chance to flatten this curve and minimize the impact of a possibility of a third wave. We're not going to get vaccines until early next year. We'll talk about that next. So we're still at an exposed area to what we are dealing with. And so I can't stress that enough. Europe just came down from lockdown. The United Kingdom from 4 weeks absolute lockdown. So if these curves are not flattened, then we could have more restrictions. And I think that's going to affect all of us in certain ways. I'm fully aware. Okay, so vaccines. 3 companies are on standby in Canada: Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca. They are looking at and have applied for approval of their vaccines. Some of the approvals are already happening in the United States, so hopefully that will work out seamlessly. It's going to be a logistic nightmare, as you can appreciate, for the amount of people we have. The first set of doses will be 6 million, which, as most of you may understand, it takes 2 doses in order for the efficacy of up to 95% to come into play. So 3 million people, which is less than 10% of our population, are going to have the opportunity for the first one. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they're going to vaccinate. And there's already talk that, of course, the vulnerable, the elderly, the frontline workers, and the ones with underlying health conditions. And then they were talking yesterday that after that, it might go by age group to minimize the perception of favoritism. So I'm not sure that anybody really knows how this is all going to happen, because it's going to be led by the government of Canada, who's then going to distribute it to the provinces. So that starts in early next year. Mr. Trudeau has stated he's hoping that they can have everybody inoculated by the end of September. I'm hoping that is true because we need it very, very badly. I think by the end of 2021, we should have some real understanding of where we're at. So distribution, it's led by the Canadian government under the direction of an ex-military chief of staff who was who was on TV yesterday stating that people need to have patience to keep with the standards so that they can get the medicine out, the vaccines out, so that we can get people in a safe position. All right, let's go to the next one. So, new normal. Families are together, restrictions, working from home, schooling, some form of e-learning. The secondary organizations have already been done. E-learning. My son is going to SAIT, and he's been in his apartment online on a consistent basis. Everybody's living with the COVID pandemic stress. It affects, and it's part of our daily lives. And everyone is, I believe, I'm concerned about exposure. It's not going to be longer. This is unprecedented. There's things that we're finding out about COVID-19. So the one thing I want to talk about, let's make sure that if you have a coworker or a relative or a friend that's not having a good day, could we at least say, how are you doing? Let's not take the humanity out of all of this. I mean, we're pushed to some edges financially, emotionally, mentally, and it's important that we keep our humanity. Now, what does business look like? Retail capacity at 25%. The economic climate is a little bit uncertain for 2021. Real estate is still holding steady in Calgary for sure. And they're talking about maybe a 3.3 GDP growth next year. They've budgeted oil at $58 a barrel. This is all from the government of Alberta. Mid-year down to 36.40. So this is the U.S. barrel. 45 in 21, 54.90, 22. And these are best guesses, folks. And natural gas anywhere from $1.70 gigajoule to 250. Exchange rate is going to stay 74.6 to 77.2. And I think most people are recognizing that the full recovery of the economy from 2019 monies is anywhere from 2022 to 2023. Unemployment is sitting at about 11.6, and they're projecting that employment could fall by 7%. And so far this year, 258,000 of the jobs of the 360,900 lost have been placed back into the economy, but that's still 100,000 people short in Canada. So as you can see, there is still some challenges of what we're going to look at. School, again, we've talked about that. I foresee we're going to have a lot more e-learning until this vaccine is completely put through. Future, more of the same, folks. Until we get this beast under control, we still need to continue with masks, social distancing, personal hygiene, restrictions, and we're going to have to deal with the COVID pandemic fatigue. So what are some of the industry challenges? And this is where we'd like to hear from you. If you have some industry challenges of maintaining decorum with your business process, we'd like for you to share that with us so that we can have a good discussion. Logistics, I think, have been difficult. We've had ordered some specific an appliance, and it took us 3 months to get, which usually they have in stock. New reference points for schedules need to be in place when there's delays. Lumber has been highly sought after because what a lot of people did this year is do their home renovations due to the fact that they could not travel. And so that put a tremendous so that profit margins may have shrunk. And the one thing we need to talk about, of course, is Covet disruptions. Anytime there's any kind of exposure in, anytime that you have exposure of COVID-19, it now has to be isolated and tested, and that could take time. That's sites, offices. Of course, the 4 months of subsidies, the CERB, affected some employers also drastically, because heard of one family who had 4 eligible members to receive the full amount of CERB, and they decided to take 4 months off. And there's been a number of businesses that have been affected by that. And of course, those disruptions affect the quality of our, how would I say this, the quality of our work, perhaps. It definitely affects the scheduling. And in certain cases, COVID also had a tremendous amount of people having to get laid off. Rent subsidies are available. Wage subsidies are available for companies until next year. And we're going to see what everything looks like that at the end of that. Now, I checked out RENX, which is a real estate entity, and there's a vacancy of 30% in the downtown Calgary offices. And there has been a shift of industrial real estate. There's lots more available. Right now, the residential market is reasonable. And the one thing we need to understand that e-commerce is going to grow exponentially, which is going to affect maybe the malls and the retail stores due to the fact that a lot of people are ordering goods from their computers at home. We talked about a little bit on the future we want to take a look at. And there's not really anything that we haven't discussed already, except I want to touch base on the complacency, folks. Complacency. People are fatigued of COVID and the pandemic, and there have been times that they have been lax in their social distancing, personal hygiene, PPE, and such. So, as an employer, is it possible that we again reiterate how important it is that they maintain that standard? And so, until we get this thing somewhat under control. What really has been interesting is the amount of misinformation that we've seen in the world. There's people that have believed of conspiracy theories that this whole virus is a political and an economic motive. Also, there's a word out there that the vaccine's mRNA, so that their makeup will affect people's DNA. And in certain cases that people are looking at, that they think that microchips will be implanted. There's absolutely no foundation to this misinformation. The governments of this world have been doing their best to get a vaccine out to as quickly as possible. In most cases, those vaccines usually take 10 years to create. So the fact that they've been doing this in this short timeline with the efficacy of up to 95% is very, very impressive. Very impressive. So, lack of compliance. Government of Alberta has put fines into place that they can fine individuals $1,000 fines if they are not socially distancing in their homes, or they're in homes where they shouldn't be, and up to $100,000 to the courts. There's already been some cases out east where people have been fined $1,000, and the event planners have been charged and will be going to court on that. So in the future, of course, we need to keep all COVID procedures. So I hope that gives you a basic process of just an update. That's really what it is. I just want you to know that we did research all of these websites, and to make sure that you know that it's not just what I'm saying, it's what the people that are way smarter than I am are putting out there. And so if you want to check those out, please do so, because I think it's important that you have your own information as well. So any questions?
Yes, I'll start off with a couple that Lauren and I have come up with.
Okay.
Do you think masking and social distancing type measures will be in place for people who have had the vaccine, or will everyone need to kind of wear masks and be socially distant until half, or at least the bulk of the population is vaccinated?
Yeah, well, I foresee that we're going to be wearing masks for a long, long time yet. Right now, we're supposed to be in the midst of a flu season. There's been nobody that has lost their lives on flu. So the masks work. How do you know if a person has been vaccinated? How do you know that you're not exposed? So I foresee that masks are going to be worn for a long, long time yet, at least till we get the information that it's no longer needed. Myself, I have not been sick for since we started wearing masks. I haven't been sick. So obviously the masks work. They say that if you are not wearing a mask, you have an opportunity of a 17% of getting exposed if you're in contact anywhere near someone who is. It's down to just under 3% with a mask on. So yeah, is there any hard facts on that? There's been no communication on that, but I would recommend that until you know that the people that you work with, I'm not sure what the government is going to say about that. There's no information on the internet at the moment.
No, that's good to know. I completely agree. So just for everyone listening, if you have a question for Ernest, please type it in the chat box and I'll be able to read off your question for you. So I just have a question from Karen here. She's wondering, do you think builders should make it mandatory for homeowners to wear masks while workers are doing warranty repairs in their home in a better effort to kind of keep their own workers safe?
Well, yep. We've had some renovations done in our home, and we have asked, as well of ourselves wearing masks, that they would disinfect their process and then wear masks, and then ourselves, after they left, we disinfected the house again. So because you don't know, and this is what the difficulty is, you know who you talk to, who is part of your core bubble, your core group, but it's still, who have they been exposed to? Who have the workers been exposed to? I foresee that should be mandatory. But if you are getting renovations done in your home, then I would recommend that you full protocol, just to protect you and your kids, and then disinfect when they've left.
Yeah, completely. So next question is, how do we deal with employees or customers who don't think COVID is a risk, like since it's a 98% survival rate, so they don't think it's a big deal? How do we kind of work with people like that?
Ask that to the people that have had COVID. Every time that we look at the TVs or the websites and YouTubes, and everyone that's had COVID is begging everyone to do their part so that they don't ever get it. What concerns me with COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen, is we don't know enough about it. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, even with those people who are asymptomatic, who have no outward signs. What is the long-term process going to be with this virus in their system? And I'm not talking 1 year, 2 years, I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years. They don't have enough data to manage that. We as owners of businesses have the right to refuse entry of anyone who is not abiding by the rules that we've set out. Now, right now, in Calgary and Edmonton, it's an absolute must, inside and out. It's the law. The municipal law has stated we're doing that, right? So company policy can state, if you work for us, these are the process we want you to do. Wear masks, disinfect, socially distance as part of your condition of employment. And so as you can see, we haven't done a good enough job, because let me just, if I may go back, please, just give me a couple of seconds. Sorry, I'll just pull this back. Can you see that? Active cases update?
Yes.
Okay. We are leading in active cases, ladies and gentlemen. That should concern us deeply. That means that we haven't done what we should have done by wearing masks, social distancing, personal hygiene. Because what's going to happen is, even though that some people say 98%, out of those total 1,744 active cases today, some of those individuals are not going to make it, folks. And that's the harsh reality. And with the health system overburdened to the point that they may not have enough beds to put people into the hospital, let alone the ICU, there's going to be some decisions made. And I was watching the news yesterday where doctors are going to be in the same position as they were in New York in March, where they are having to make life decisions with people. So I think it's arrogant when people say, well, I don't have to do this. It is very inhumane, in my opinion, that they will willingly put themselves and other people at risk. I respect people's opinions. I get that. But we need to make sure we're in this together. And as an organization, as a company, we have the right to dictate, because we're paying our employees on their actions. Really, the public's a little different, but you can stop them and say, no, we won't, we can't do that, because then we're not maintaining our own standards as well. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I just have a follow-up question from Karen. She's the one that asked about if it should be mandatory for people to wear masks while workers are in their home conducting warranty. She's wondering if there's like a document somewhere that has those rules listed, just so she can enforce it. Do you know if that exists at all?
I think there may be some information. I'll send that to you. I'll take a look after this meeting, and I'll send that to you. That's just rules and policy rules on expectations. Let me look at my database, see what I can come up with.
Great, thank you. So the next question comes from Miriam. So she's wondering, she knows all the vaccines are a little different since they're all from different companies. So she's wondering if you know, if you get your first shot from a Moderna vaccine, can your second shot be from a Pfizer one?
No, that's a very good question. No, if you're gonna go with Moderna, you've got to have two Modernas, because they are created, right? They're not all the same. They have slight variations. And so because the Pfizer vaccine has to be kept at minus 70 degrees centigrade, which is 103 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 103. Moderna also has to keep cool, but at a different level. So it's a different vaccine. So because it's the way that they're made up. I'm not a medical lab person, but that is a reality. If you're going to start with Pfizer, then you need to end with Pfizer. If you're going to go with Moderna, then you need to stay with Moderna.
That makes sense. Thank you. I have a question from Peter now. He's wondering if doing a temperature check is still an effective way to determine if someone is symptom-free or not.
They're still doing it at the airports, folks. You can't get on the plane unless you get a temperature check. So yes, it can be an effective tool to show if someone has a temperature, which could indicate that they've been infected. There's also a process that you may not have a temperature and still be affected, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But yeah, it is still a positive thing. Then at least you can know that you did everything you could that's reasonable to minimize the opportunity of exposure for your clients and for your employees.
Awesome. Next question comes from Wendy. She's wondering if you have any statistics on COVID in the construction sites and open spaces, because a lot of workers seem to think they are safe from the virus because they're working outside and not indoors.
That's a great question. I do not have any information at the moment, but I'm going to do some research on that for you. But let's put it this way. A colleague of mine worked in an office, and a lady was in the door of where they were working, which was about 12 feet away from them. And he heard Monday that the lady tested positive for COVID-19. 5 employees are no longer at work until they get tested in order to get the results whether positive or negative or not. And so construction sites are no different. They need to, so while I don't have numbers, construction sites are no different than offices than going to a retail store. There is opportunity for exposure, and we are hearing that people have been exposed and that whole trades have to go get their employees tested because they had opportunity for exposure.
Great, thank you. Next question. Do you think numbers are going to keep climbing now that people think a vaccine is here? Because they kind of think, oh, the end is in sight, the vaccine's here, I can kind of go back to normal because it's all going to be over soon. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, millions of people traveled in the United States for Thanksgiving, and the same is going to happen for this Christmas. I know of personal people in my life that have stated, I'm going to have Christmas and I'm going to invite my family completely. So I'm going to let you make up your own mind. If we do not, the prediction is this, if we do not minimize exposure and no indoor social gatherings in any setting, and we don't do that, then we're going to see an uptick in numbers. It'll be that, it could be the super spreader. And so, yeah, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. And remember, we're already at a breaking point with we're already at a stress point with our healthcare system where there may not be enough to go around for everybody who gets ill. And I think we all need to do our job and our part to minimize that opportunity. Because don't forget, our healthcare workers have been working since March, since this whole thing started. They haven't had a break. There was one doctor in the United States that worked 251 days straight. 251 days straight. So is the quality of care, right? We have tremendously qualified healthcare workers, and there's nothing but the greatest respect. But can you imagine you working 251 days straight and be as effective as if you were working 5 days a week? Yeah, December 24th, 25th, 26th, and New Year's, folks, are danger points.
Yeah, I completely agree. So kind of to follow up with that sort of, if we know an employee has broken rules outside of their workplace over Christmas and has attended large gatherings, are we able to delay their return to work after the holidays to be sure they are well?
I would isolate them or get tested. And what I would recommend that you put a policy into place stating the expected behavior for the next weeks. I would highly recommend that you state a policy. We expect you to follow the rules as part of your employment. Be positive about it. We just want to protect you. Should there be an understanding that you did not follow those rules, then you're going to go have to get tested, or you're going to have to go in isolation for 14 days. But let's set the table so that we do everything correctly. So it's just not a knee-jerk reaction. It's an actual, and that is good for all employees.
No, that's a good answer. Thank you. Next question comes from Wendy. She's wondering, how do you factor in the mental health challenges, and are these problems almost outweighing COVID infections? For example, I think there's been lots of studies that have shown suicide rates and depression levels have gone up quite significantly, just kind of due to lockdowns and having to be in isolation. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's why I said, and I'm a firm believer that the long-term health effects from a mental standpoint are yet to be identified and understood to their gravity in some cases. As you can appreciate, that when people are under this kind of stress for long periods of time, there's opportunity for verbal and physical abuse as well. And PTSD can also become part of that. Yes, I am concerned due to the fact that while everybody is so focused on COVID-19 exposure, that the peripheral process, including other health requirements such as surgeries, such as counseling, such as processes, and with the extended care facilities being locked down, which causes a tremendous mental stress on families because their loved ones are alone. Child care facilities have been curtailed, so people are compressed in their homes. And yes, we have not seen the, how would I say, the numbers that's possible. So again, please, ladies and gentlemen, if you could, in your own businesses, have some basic awareness, situation awareness. If someone is coming in and you know that they're not having a good day, could you take the time out of your busy schedule and say, are you okay? That could be the difference between someone getting the help they need or things escalate. Yeah, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned.
Yeah, no, thank you for that answer. I know a lot of people that have been struggling mentally during this time as well, so that's some good feedback. So next question, we kind of see on job sites and at grocery stores, you'll see people that are wearing a mask, but they're not wearing it properly. A lot of people will wear it below their nose instead of over their nose, or they'll take it off to talk. So obviously we don't want and can't police that full time, but we also need to keep people safe. What are some tips you have for dealing with that?
Be polite, but point at the mask and then make sure you've got your mask pointed out. And if somebody needs some education, have a conversation. But let's do that in a positive manner. People are stressed. People are stressed. Well, one of the things you need to be aware of, there are people out there that believe their civil liberties are being taken and put away from them or taken away from them. That's not what this is about. So be very careful with those individuals to ensure that you don't put yourself in a harm's way. The best thing that we can do in our own businesses is to isolate them away from others or ask them to leave. Prime example in airplanes. And they tell you that you need to wear your masks all the time, with the exception of when they feed you. Give you water or drink or a snack. It's baffling. It's actually counterproductive, but that's a personal process for me. Again, positive accountability is always excellent, and education is still the key. Is everybody going to do it? No, we're going to have people that are non-compliant, saying you need to have policies in place. No, sorry, we can't have you here. I just can't do that. Can't put my people at risk. Remember, as employers, we're responsible for our employees and the public.
Completely agree. It takes kind of everyone working together to get through this, right? So next question, do you know of any outbreaks in the construction industry?
Not as of today. I haven't seen any today that I'm aware of. Are there? Absolutely there are. You can see by the numbers that just the fact alone that 5 people in an office setting have the opportunity to get exposed, that transcends right to the construction site. I have not heard of any actual businesses at today or yesterday.
That's a little bit of good news, at least. So this next question I have is our last question, unless anyone else has a question for Ernest. So please get it into the chat box if you do have a question. So should we still be taking daily logs of who is working on sites every day? And should we still be doing temperature checks and checklists that were done in the spring? Like, I feel when COVID first started, people were really good about doing that, but that might have become a bit more relaxed now. What are your thoughts on that?
Every province is having challenges with tracing. In British Columbia, they're taxed to the max. I don't foresee Alberta being any different. The more information that we can have to effectively trace people who may have been exposed, the better it is for all of us. And so, yes, I would absolutely continue to log who has been on site. I would not hesitate to continue with temperature checks. I would also put into play the basic checklist for individuals as part of the orientations, or as part of your checklist. Have you been exposed, or do you feel those kind of things, to make sure that we've got that information, because the government can't do it all, folks. We need to help ourselves. And this could be the difference of somebody getting a test done that could put them in a situation where they can get isolated or other things. But then you've done your due diligence, and I think that is reasonable and practical.
No, I agree. That's great. Thank you. So it looks like that's all of our questions. So I'm just going to wrap things up now. Thank you, Ernest, for taking the time out of your day to come chat with us. I hope everyone that was here found this very insightful. This is one of the few webinars Build has put together as part of our Fall and Winter webinar series. Please visit buildcr.com to check what other webinars we have coming up. Our next webinar will be this coming Tuesday, December 8th, which will be focusing on mental health in the workplace. So kind of chatting a little bit what we chatted about 10 minutes ago, which will be free to attend. So that'll be great. And Ernest, I think, is going to send me some statistics and whatnot that people asked about. So when he does that, I will send it out to everyone just as a general heads up. Perfect. Thank you again, Ernest.
You're very, very welcome. Yeah, and if you, Lauren, and I can just stay after for just a couple of minutes, that would be awesome, so we can get some logistics taken care of on those research that we need. Okay.
Perfect. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much.